collecting is a way where you learn compromise, and you are still married 42 years after because you've learned this art of compromise. With the smartphone, that the digital was becoming part of the human being. I was born 100% Homo sapiens, and with this digital, with the smartphone, I'm 70% Homo sapiens and 30% Homo numericus. I think we have entered into a kind of 1984 2.0 world. And the only way to counterbalance this will be culture, will be humanism. And art is one of these ways.
Chers amis, queridos amigos, and dearest friends of the pod, welcome back to another episode of Vita Brevis. For better or for worse, most people who find themselves with a surplus of wealth behave in a very predictable way. They buy more, they accumulate. If they're interested in art, they might build bigger walls, they might rent more storage space, and they collect things that often are for the simple pursuit of more. But my guest today looks at the act of collecting and calls it something entirely different. He calls it an elegant way to burn a fortune. His name is Sylvain Lévy. Along with his wife Dominique, he is the co-founder of the DSL Collection, one of the most radical private collections in the world. For generations, Sylvain's family lived in the hyper-refined, manicured world of Parisian haute couture and commercial real estate. But in 2005, he stepped off a plane in Shanghai and experienced what he calls a total Red Bull shock. He left behind the sleeping beauty of Paris and walked directly into an empire transforming itself at a speed and scale humanity had never seen before. He realized that if art is the ultimate mirror of society, then Chinese contemporary art was the defining story of our century. But instead of playing by the rules of the traditional Western art market, where you buy from major galleries or you buy from one of the auction houses, Sylvain and Dominique did something entirely counterintuitive. First, they treated their collection like a bonsai tree rather than a forest. They placed a strict cap on it, 350 works, no more. Every single year, they prune 5% of the collection. Growth isn't the goal, precision is. They locked their focus tightly onto a specific historical window, Chinese contemporary from 1997 to 2012, the golden, wild, unregulated years when Chinese art broke into the global narrative. Secondly, they completely abandoned the idea of building a physical brick-and-mortar museum. Sylvain realized that if a private collection is hidden away behind locked doors, it isn't really just private, it's almost kind of dead. So long before the art world began to understand digital spaces, the DSL Collection pioneered the idea of physical art in a digital space. They built museums in Second Life in 2009, launched virtual reality spaces in 2016, and released an award-winning independent video game on Steam in 2020 that featured artworks from their collection. Sylvain describes himself as 70% Homo sapien and 30% Homo numericus, a nomadic cyber flaneur surfing the digital wave. Lately, you can find Sylvain obsessively publishing white papers on LinkedIn, generating millions of views, and turning this network into a massive platform for raw ideas. He feels that we have officially entered a 1984 2.0 world, a landscape of total algorithmic control and tech surveillance. And in a world like that, true culture and humanism are no longer just hobbies. They are the only survival tools we have left to stay sane. This is a sprawling conversation that meanders from Parisian flea markets to Shanghai studios, from the illusion of fractional art investments to the beautiful art of compromise and marriage. He is as passionate and brilliant as he is charming. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Monsieur Sylvain Lévy.
Vita Brevis is here to entertain you. Nothing discussed here should be taken as financial, investment, or legal advice. Views expressed are personal and for general discussion only.
Sylvain, this finds you in Paris, I imagine, yes?
I'm in Paris. I was in Cannes last week for the
Oh,
Festival du Film.
Oh,
And I'm back
wonderful.
in Paris, and in Paris, it's very, very hot at this moment.
Oh, yes, I understand it's very, very warm, to say the
Yeah,
least. It's great that you were in Cannes for the film festival. Are you involved in the film industry?
not at all. It was just for
Uh-huh.
pleasure.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Wonderful. Um, do I understand correctly that your background is actually in fashion and retail?
Totally. My father has created a company called Carole,
Uh-huh.
and when he passed away, we decided to sell it. And so I've worked there for nearly 15 years. And
Okay.
then after I went into real estate, and I'm making my living out of real estate.
Okay.
And my wife's background is also fashion. Her mother has a haute couture company called 40. So we've
Uh-huh.
been in fashion for a long time, and now I'm just in real estate.
Got it. What kind of real estate is it that you do?
We do proper commercial real estate.
So, you rent storefronts.
Yes,
Tell me more about it. Have you done any ground up development, or is this purely cash flowing
cash flow.
leases? Cash flowing leases. Interesting.
Yes,
In Paris or in the region?
in France. I mean,
Okay. Okay.
mostly in Paris, but
Okay.
in France.
But they're storefronts as opposed to residential?
It's mostly storefronts.
Well, a few weeks ago when we first spoke about this, about coming on the podcast, you had mentioned to me about the real estate. Uh, uh, and part of the reason you mentioned was that basically art doesn't pay. Does this ring a bell? You remember that?
Yeah, I just told you, I think that, if I remind well, collecting is an elegant way to burn a fortune,
Yes.
first. And the other
Uh huh.
thing is that, we don't sell. We don't, we just change every year something like 5%,
Yeah.
but we don't make, buy and sell, all the time.
Yes, you're not a dealer.
So I'm not a dealer.
I want to talk about the idea that you have a sort of fixed cap of artworks in your collection, and we'll get to that in a little bit, which is really, really interesting. But I want to know how you got started. Did you grow up around art, for example?
Not at all. We got started when we got married. My family is not a family of collectors, and my wife's families are not collectors.
Hmm.
But my sister-in-law was married to someone who is from a big family of collectors. We are not from a family of collectors, but we became
Hmm.
collectors slowly and slowly.
Hmm.
And what is interesting is that we move from traditional notion of collecting as amassing objects to
Hmm.
something which became the journey of a family. First, the journey of a wife and a husband,
Hmm.
which is not always very common to have the two persons collecting together.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's interesting to have this double point of view when you collect, but also it's a very good way to keep on a marriage. Collecting is a way where you learn compromise, and you are still married 42 years after because you've learned this art of compromise. The other thing, collecting as a couple gives you the always something to do together,
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
which is also very interesting. And the last thing
Hmm.
which is interesting is that also my son and my daughter were, since their first days, I shall say, involved
Hmm.
in art and in collecting.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
and especially with the Chinese collections, they were very, very involved because they lived in China. So it's
Hmm.
more
Hmm.
than just collecting; is a real art de vivre. Uh, uh, this collection for us.
Hmm. Hmm. That's wonderful. Do you remember what the first artwork you bought together
Yes,
was?
Dupuy Godot, a painting by a painter called Dupuy Godot.
Interesting.
a kind of
Um,
impressionist.
an impressionist.
Yes.
Interesting. And have you been sort of like spending your weekends at the galleries in Paris since a certain period?
Yeah, and it's interesting also we begin to learn because we moved to an apartment and, we took, Jacques Grange as a decorator, and, with him, we begin to go to the flea market, and we begin also to learn to collect not only in the traditional, galleries or whatever, but also in going in the flea market, into, and, the second way where we learned very much differently, it was with this Chinese collection, because when you live in Paris, it's 10,000 kilometers from China. You are not,
Mhm,
you cannot go every day to the galleries or every weekend. So, we had to find a new way to, build the collection. And, the way was that we often went to China and we went from one artist to another. And
mhm.
also, we, used WeChat,
Yeah.
to see what was exhibit in China, and we
Huh.
collect so through WeChat. So this is also something different from the traditional way of collecting, is, the fact that in the beginning, there was no many galleries in China, and so we went from one artist to another. And also we use WeChat, and also were, I should say, molded by, the I should say, the flea market spirit,
Hmm.
and not just the traditional gallery market.
Yeah. Yeah. In the West, for our listeners who don't know, I imagine most of you do. Um, but the traditional model is that you either buy through galleries or auction houses or occasionally directly from the artist's studio. But what you're saying is that when you first started buying art in China, and this is what, in the late 90s, I imagine?
In beginning of 2005.
Oh, 2005. Okay. Okay. But you were working directly with the artist through WeChat, which is a social media platform, correct?
Yes.
Interesting. How is that platform different than what we have, say, here in the US? It might be more prominent in France, but I know it's quite different, right?
It's totally different.
Yeah, tell
Uh,
us about it.
it's not at all used. It's part of the life of the Chinese people, WeChat. They do everything with WeChat.
Hmm.
They they buy things, they take taxi with WeChat, WeChat is their credit card, is their social network, is everything.
Wow.
And so, they are accustomed to use WeChat not only as a traditional social media, but also
Mhm.
as a way to give accessibility, to their studio, to their exhibitions or whatever, and naturally also to sell through WeChat.
Really interesting. It's a very fascinating alternative model. And I think that with the popularity of, say, Instagram in the last 10 years, uh, here in the West at least, that has opened up the opportunity for a lot of artists, for example, to sell their art directly to their collectors, which wasn't the case before.
It's true, and
Instagram was huge.
it's becoming quite frequent for an artist,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
who has not access to, the traditional galleries, and, to at least to test the water,
Yeah.
through Instagram.
Well, I remember before social media, artists would always ask me, how do I exhibit my artwork? How do I find a gallery? And at the time, I was telling them, well, maybe publishing a book or something like this might be a better way to just sort of take care of the situation yourself and sort of publish it. But with social media, I mean, you have the world at your fingertips. It's a very, very efficient way to you know, to reach millions and millions of people. It's fascinating. Going back to your collection, I know that it is focused on Chinese art from 1997 to 2012. What was it about Chinese art in particular that you were interested in?
First, it's, I shall say it's by chance that we we moved into this collection. Before, we were collecting design for 25 years, and
Mm.
before, we were also collecting contemporary art. We happened to go to China in 2005 because my brother-in-law was moving in China.
Mhm.
And, when you come from a kind of sleeping beauty like Paris to a Red Bull city like Shanghai, you have a shock. And
Mhm.
naturally, what we saw in front of us was a country which was incredibly transforming itself at a speed and a scale that we cannot imagine in Europe.
Mhm.
And so we thought that since art is a mirror of a society, we wanted to try to find in the contemporary art this, I shall say, this huge transformation that we are experiencing in the city.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so we decided to begin this collection of Chinese contemporary art. And why 1997 to 2012? Because I think it's that this is our personal view. It's the golden years of China. It's the years of Deng Xiaoping and the years of Xi Jinping, of the two presidents of Shanghai. It was during these years that a lot of things happened with this intensity. It was the beginning of the market, the beginning of the internet. There was very low censorship at this moment. And
Mhm.
so the creativity at this moment was very, very, very strong. And today, there is another creativity, but it doesn't reflect the same period of the transformation of China.
Would you say that the market has become mature in a sense? And maybe in the era you were talking about, it was a little bit younger and edgier and maybe more exciting?
It was more exciting. It was much more exciting because it was something which was I shall say, just at the beginning was totally unregulated. I shall say it was in a certain way a little bit hectic or
Mhm.
chaotic, and so it was for me more exciting as a collector.
Is it essentially painting? Because I know that they were doing quite a bit of non-traditional media as well. Did you maybe start with painting and then move on to other more experimental media?
Or we moved with everything because the second decision that we've taken when we decided to begin this collection was to make a museum type collection. Because at this moment there was very few museum types collection. There was, especially in the West, there was Woolens and Woolizig.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
when you speak of a museum type collection, you speak of every type of medium:
Mhm.
sculpture, painting, videos, uh, everything, installations, photography. So we decided to, since the beginning, to collect everything.
And I understand your collection is capped at approximately 350 works, and annually you sort of prune 5% of that, right? Is this through sale or donation or a combination of the both?
First, why we've done that?
Okay.
And when we begin this collection, we wanted to look at the collection in a different way. We wanted this collection to become a project and not just about amassing object. A project with a certain number of, I shall say, goals. The first one, we wanted this project to be a family project. And it means that our children who are involved in this collection since the beginning, they've collected a certain number of the works which are in the collection. They collected themselves
Hmm.
because they lived in China 3 years. Everyone lived 3 years in China. My son speaks fluently Chinese. He went to Beida. And so, first, it was a family collection. It was very, very important to look at it like that. The second thing, which what we wanted, is that We want this collection to be a project and not just a collection. A project based on object, because the core is a collection, but a project which was also based on two things. First, it has to be open to the public, and then we can discuss how we decided to open the plug. And the second thing, which was important for us, it has to resonate with its time. And the last thing, which is important, our vision, it has to be something which is timely and timelessless as a cultural brand.
Tell me more about that. That sounds interesting.
What is interesting is that from my background and the background of my wife, we are accustomed to the notion of brand. And in 2005, when you arrived, and especially more today than ever, art has become the ultimate luxury good. Art and luxury are very similar. The biggest foundations are luxury foundations. Kering, Richemont, LVMH, Prada, Cartier, they are luxury foundations. If you look at the structure of the ecosystem of the art world, it's exactly like the ecosystem of the luxury industry. You have a concentration in 3 auction houses. You have in concentration in 5 galleries. You have in concentration of a very few number of key players as a collector. So it's exactly the same way. And it's exactly the same customer. The customer of the luxury industry are the customer of the art industry. So for us to implement luxury's rules into a collection was something very important. And this is how we consider that we could, if we work very hard and on the long term, we could create a brand called DSL Collection.
The DSL Collection, that's right. And you mentioned something about exhibiting it to the public. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that you do not have a physical space, but you have decided to employ sort of virtual architecture, the metaverse, for lack of a better word. Tell us more about this and how that alters the experience of viewing art when it's not in a physical space.
Most of the people experience art first through books or through Instagram. All the people have not been in Egypt to see the pyramid, or have not, we've learned art mostly through books. So the physical experience is not the way art has been expanded in generally speaking. Everybody has not visited the National Museum of Beijing or the Hermitage in Russia. So the first thing is to say that the physical is important, but it's not the only way to access to art. This is the first thing. The other thing is that when we decided to be public, opening a museum was something very challenging for us in terms of funding the museum, but also in terms of making this museum, I shall say, relevant in the competition with other museums or other institutions. It's very difficult. And so we said that we would like to find another model. 2005, it was YouTube, the beginning of YouTube. And so we decided that perhaps the most interesting model would be a Phygital model, a digital model plus loaning the works to museums, to exhibitions, to whatever, to show the works through a physical way, but not through our physical way only. And so we opened a website in 2005. And then very quickly, we noticed, especially in 2007 with the smartphone, that the digital was becoming part of the human being. I was born 100% Homo sapiens, and with this digital, with the smartphone, I'm 70% Homo sapiens and 30% Homo numericus.
Hmm.
And so we decided to surf on this wave. So 2005 website, 2009 Second Life, 2011 we went on iPad, 2015 VR, 2020 a video game with the art world, 2020 metaverse, and now artificial intelligence. And
Wow.
what is interesting is that by surfing since 2005 on the digital wave, we've acquired a great experience. And also, we've seen how the human being has been transformed in the way he experiences art with the digital, I should say, the digital revolution. This is, and I will ask something very important. Having a foot in China, we saw this even in a different way than in Europe, because in China, it went deeper and even faster, this digital revolution. And so it was for us also very interesting to see the difference of pace between what was happening in Europe and what was happening in Asia regarding this digital revolution.
So I was able to visit your collection on the web. What is the web address for that? What is the URL? It's DSL Collection?
DS.net.
DSLcollection.net. Okay. We'll put that in the show notes so people can visit it. And it is a sort of virtual metaverse kind of three-dimensional experience, which is interesting because some of the artworks are physical. I recall seeing a Francis Bacon. Is that correct?
Yeah, because I wanted to show something very interesting is that
Mhm.
with the digital, you can make the impossible become possible. You can put works, you can create experiences, you can create exhibitions with works that will never find themselves physically in the same space.
And you mentioned a video game. Tell us more about that.
It was interesting because the language of our time is video game. There are more than 2 billion people playing video games. And what is interesting is that the art world, the art has not been, as I say, represented in this new type of leisure or in this new type of experience. And so we decided to create a video game with inside some of the works of the collection. It was done by a team in Hong Kong, a Chinese team in Hong Kong, and it was nominated by Tencent as the best indie game of 2020 uh, uh, because of this new way to make people experience art.
What is the name of the video game?
The Forgetter,
The Forgetter. All
and it's
right. And
still, and
yeah,
you can still have it on Steam.
you can get it on Steam. Okay, I was going to ask if we could access that through your other website. So, access through Steam.
Thank you for listening to Vita Brevis. If you know someone who would enjoy this conversation, please share it with them. A follow or review also goes a long way in helping us grow. Thank you. And remember, life is short, but art is forever.
Well, let's sort of switch gears a little bit. I first encountered you on LinkedIn. I noticed that you were very active, publishing not necessarily daily, but obsessively, it seems. And there's always a lot of comments, and you seem to be generating a lot of buzz there. I noticed that you started publishing a series of white papers, right? And we'll get to some of the content of these in a little bit. I understand you've published about 20 of these. In addition to the LinkedIn, is there a link where we can access this sort of library of all of your white papers?
Not at this moment. Uh, First, why LinkedIn? It's interesting.
Tell
Why?
me. Yeah.
Why? Two things. We decided that what is important for the collection is not just only to be related to artworks, but to become a platform of ideas. And especially in times in which we are living, of uncertainties, of incredibly systemic changes, it's very important to bring food for the thought for the people. And for us, so it was very important to look at how we could do that. How we could do that in a way where a certain number of people could really have access to it. If you publish a book, it's limited to 2,000, 3,000 people. You publish an article, it will be limited to the copy of the newspaper or the whatever you publish.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on LinkedIn since 2008, when there was 40 million people only. I noticed that LinkedIn was becoming the biggest editorial platform in the world.
Hmm.
And so what I've noticed that, and so I decided that it would be a great place to try this experience of becoming a platform of ideas.
Hmm.
And so I began to post.
Hmm.
And what I noticed is there was a real appetite of the common people, common artists, common people, not only the experts, the common people, to express themselves. And to tell you the truth, I learned a lot from the comments of the people. Because most of them are really very grounded. They are their feet grounded, rooted in the ground. And
Mhm.
so this was my first reaction. And so since I wanted to bring more and more people to comment, I've increased the number of posts that I've done. The other thing which I've noted, what was very interesting, is that people also were very interested if you bring them not only art, because today what is important is to be capable to connect the dots differently, to connect the dots with art, innovation, luxury, social society, geopolitics, art market, finance, because all that together is totally mixed at this moment. We live in a time where everything is mixed. Artificial intelligence will impact art. Financial situation impact art. Innovation impact art. Geopolitical impact art. So if you want to bring to the people a way to think out of the traditional boundaries of art, you have to give them, I should say, food for the thought. And so I've
Mhm.
enlarged, widened the subject that I'm interested in. And so naturally, it has brought its effect. To tell you the truth, and then after I will tell you the limits of that. Uh,
Mhm.
at this moment, for the last 360 days, 365 days, I had more than 3,200,000 views on my post.
Amazing.
I've,
Yeah.
I've reached 520,000 people.
Have you heard of Substack?
I read Substack, but once again, I want to be in the place where people are. Substack, you have to bring people to Substack. But it brings me to the limits of what I'm doing. My limits are very simple. I'm depend 100% on the algorithm. It's not me who choose really the people who I really want to go to. the algorithm tomorrow can decide that what I'm doing is not good and make me disappear. So I have, I shall say, a platform where potentially there are millions of people who can be reached, but I cannot reach them directly because I have to reach them through algorithm. So this is the limit of the game.
It's interesting that we're talking about the sort of framing function of these different platforms. And it reminds me of one of your recent white papers, and it's fresh. I think in the sort of the cultural capital space is James Murdoch's purchase. His company Lupa Systems just purchased for what is it, about $300 million. It was the Vox Media Network, the Tribeca Film Festival Network, and for all the art lovers out there, that includes MCH, which is Art Basel. And it's really interesting because the play for Murdoch is not to buy the cultural assets themselves, right? He's not buying the rights to the, to the films or the podcasts or the artworks. He's buying the platforms themselves. He is buying the architecture that sort of makes all of this possible. This is quite interesting. And you brought it up in your in one of your white papers. Tell us what you think about the sort of consolidation that's going between film, media, and now art.
I think it's a little bit an illustration of what I think. I think that today you have to have a global view on the way you want to express yourself. And the more you have different ways to be accessible, the more you are visible, and the more you can also deliver messages in a different way. If I make an exhibition with Art Basel, is not the same thing that if I use a podcast. And so what he's trying to do is trying to occupy the field the wider possible. It's a new way to look at things. It's a very different way of what his family has been doing. We'll see. We'll see. As you said, he's buying an architecture. He's not buying content. I'm very interested to see the future of what we will do with that, and how we'll coordinate all that.
Well, what's interesting is that his father, Rupert Murdoch, is, that's sort of the old school traditional media, right? But this purchase illustrates an acquisition of what we're calling the alternative media, web-based media. These are essentially websites, multimedia websites. Obviously Art Basel is a little bit of a different situation. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting new chapter, and this is pretty fresh news, so it's interesting to talk about it. And just this morning before we went live, I sent you
Very
a
interesting.
link. Yeah, and it was the Pivot podcast with what is it, Kara Swisher and and Scott Galloway, and they're owned by Vox, so now they're under the umbrella of the Murdoch. Well, they were very insistent that it's James Murdoch and not Rupert Murdoch. So I don't know, maybe they're just trying to calm their nerves, but we'll see. I wanted to bring up something that you'd mentioned in another one of your white papers. Christie's had a big week last week. The art market, I try to avoid talking about the art market in this podcast. I want to talk about broader ideas and not focus on things that are, sort of really short-term and topical. But we've been experiencing a sort of softening in the art market in the last few years, since 2023. And emerging galleries and even some sort of like middle-tier galleries are really, really, they're suffering. Galleries are closing. It's been tough. But it seems like the higher end, like the sort of blue chip art market, is having a moment. One evening when they, surpassed $1 billion. The thing is, these sort of marquee evening sales are essentially marketing, marketing functions for these auction houses, where the real market, the way that's tested, that's more in what we call the day sales, where there's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of lots that are being sold. Anyways, what does this tell us? That the bull market today is really exclusively for the blue chip artists.
First, it's a confirmation that there are more and more rich people in the world. And to make a sale, you need two persons, or not even two persons. You need one person now. If you have a guarantee, you've made the sale. So
Yeah.
it's, to find one rich people who will put a guarantee for a master work, it's something that is feasible today because of the number, just because of the numbers. So, we are in a situation, and this is the illustration of the present situation, is that, yes, they can make great sales because of this situation. Then after, they publicize that. It has become the way to speak of the art market, or to try to give an image of the art market through this great sales. But unfortunately, it's not the case. The rest of the art market is not that. Is not that. And
Yeah.
especially the rest of the art market suffer a lot of illiquidity. We don't even speak of prices. We speak of illiquidity. And so you have this. You have to, I should say, to understand what is what. I'm very happy that the sales were booming, because I think we need also to have great auction houses, great people, I should say, who wants to pay money for art. But I don't think that the art which was sold at the price which was sold was something which will relieve the present situation of the art market as it is today.
It does something for confidence. I remember last November when the sales were they were good. Not as good as they were this spring, but I was talking to friends who are gallerists in Miami at Art Basel, and they were actually relieved that things had gone well in November. There was this idea that there would be a general confidence going into the sale. So I think the positive energy does trickle down. If that converts to sales or not is complicated. It's still a little bit shaky out there. It's like an iceberg, right? You only see the tip of the iceberg, and that's what everybody talks about. But the real market is beneath the surface, right?
You see, for instance, I think the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ has gone very high. But you and me, we can buy share in the NASDAQ. Everybody can become rich if he bought the right shares, but everybody has access to the shares. Everybody has access to the index. Everybody. Even if you have a small amount, you can do it. If you have a big amount, you can do it. It's not the case in the art world. It's not because Monet or Brancusi had made 100 million that you can have access to this 100 million. And the difference is very big. And to tell you the truth, when I began to collect 40 years ago, there was no really auction houses, and there was no Cologne. I don't remember that there were auctions, but only for dead artists, not artists living. art fair was Art Cologne. I think it was the first one that
Yeah.
was existing. And so when I went to a gallery, when I bought an artwork, the idea of making money was not the reason why I bought the artwork. Not at all the reason, because the only way for me was to go back to the gallery to sell it, because there was no other way to do it, or to change it to something else. So the notion, the financial aspect of a collection was very, very small. And so it was not a priority for galleries to say, I'm selling you a future because this artist will be 10 times his value in 5 years. Because this is what the galleries are trying to, I shall say, to bring today on the table, is the
Yeah.
notion of this future.
Yeah.
And this is also very important, is that I've seen the transformation of the storytelling on the way an art collection should be built. And so when you say the galleries are very happy when the sales are good, I totally understand, because it has been part of this transformation
Yeah.
of the storytelling.
Yeah. It says something about the sort of privilege that the art world lives with in general, but this idea of the financialization of the art market in general, which is what, maybe 30 years old or so. And now we have platforms, and we'll get to this in a second. Well, yeah, maybe we could talk about that now. What sort of mistakes or assumptions are some of these platforms making? I'm thinking of Artsy and Masterworks, which you've heard of, and even NFTs. There was this idea of commodifying or financializing um, artworks, either through the forms of NFTs or in Masterworks through splitting up an artwork into shares. What is the value of art truly, considering that it's so illiquid? It's a complicated question, but I think it's something that needs to be addressed. People keep trying to sort of turn artworks into financial instruments, and that's a very fraught proposition.
I think that to buy a fraction of art, I prefer to buy a share on NASDAQ.
Oh, yeah.
If I had to do something
Mhm.
like that, if I look at the financial part of the art world,
Yeah.
of an
Yeah.
artwork, I will not. I prefer to invest in real estate, or to invest in something which is much more liquid, much more sure, much more regulated, than to go into, I shall say, some of these mechanism, or some of this. But it's my point of view. They exist. They have their people. They have their customers. But for me, I will not look naturally in this direction if I want to have access to an artwork in the spirit of making money out of it.
Yeah.
I don't think for me. Uh, it's okay, but it's not my story.
Well, you brought up an interesting example earlier when you were talking about art being just something for you and your wife and your children to connect, something to share. It gives you an excuse to travel and have conversations. It seems to me like the value of art outside of the object itself, either beauty or stimulation or, some sort of object of contemplation. Then there's the social side to it where it can enrich your life at a deeper sort of personal level. And for me, those two value drivers are much more secure and bankable, ironically, than the financial piece. It's just not engineered for that. And that's something I talk about quite a bit. What advice would you give to business people who would like to enter the art world, or people that come from the creative industries? What sort of advice would you give to people who want to get involved?
First, I will say, do it. I will say, do it. Uh, for many reasons, and especially one. I think we have entered into a kind of 1984 2.0 world. And the only way to counterbalance this will be culture, will be humanism. And art is one of this way. With the smartphone, that the digital was becoming part of the human being. I was born 100% Homo sapiens, and with this digital, with the smartphone, I'm 70% Homo sapiens and 30% Homo numericus. And so if you want to stay human, art could be part of that. So already for that, I shall say, get interest in culture, and especially in art. The other thing is that really, art should be an art de vivre, a way to live. Look at a way to live. Look at a way to go to museum, to take your grandson to museum, to discover new type of culture like music, like go and when you the only place which are free at this moment are the galleries. You can enter into a gallery, you don't have to pay. Now, in most of the museum, you have to pay. So take advantage of the fact that the galleries are opened. Free. Go there. Go and meet the artist. Go and discuss with the gallerist. Try to understand. Try to build yourself, I shall say, not only a knowledge, an experience. And also begin to collect. Because I think that the fact that owning is not important. What is important is how you arrive to the ownership of the piece. Because there is this kind of hunt. You are hunting for something. And this is very interesting, this is why I said to you in the beginning, the flea market. Because in the flea market, you have to learn how to buy. Because there are so many things. You are not someone in a gallery where you have only 20 paintings and you choose. You have to learn how to make yourself, as I say, happy by this hunting. So do it, and also go to museums. Go to museums, because the best place today to experience are still the museums. Because in the museums, we have still curators. We have still people who are really, really devoted, not financially speaking, to the art world. And so it's a mixture of many, many things, but I really encourage you to do it in your way, with your means, and if you can, make it as a family adventure. We live in very exciting time, very challenging times. And I think that art is a way to make people feel more, I shall say, more, in form of serenity, and do it. I encourage you to do it. I have two grandsons, 3 and 5 years.
Mhm.
We took them to museums and everywhere. And last Saturday, we took them to a concert of classical music, un concert de chambre.
Mhm.
I was fascinated to see how they were interested in. I was fascinated to see how they were listening, how they were looking at all the players of the instruments, the violin, the piano, and whatever. And it means that there is a lot of way to experience art, and not a question of age. And I was really fascinated by that. And we are very, very far from the 100 million pays for a Basquiat, whatever. We are very, very far. from
Mm-hmm,
that.
mm-hmm.
But this is the beauty of art, and this is the beauty of being interested in art.
I love it. You're very passionate, Sylvain. I can really feel that. I think it's a wonderful and very beautiful thing.
Thank you so much.
I,
I hope
I try to do this myself. It's not even about trying. It's just a way of being. It's very natural. It's not an effort. I feel that whenever I try to convince people to be interested in art, it rarely works out. It's one of those things where, you know, if it's presented to you and you have a natural affinity for it, then it's magic. And if not, that's okay too, I guess.